Have you ever woken up from a dream so strange that your mind couldn't decide if it was fear or fascination? Tonight, we're diving into a realm where nightmares don't just scare you, they follow you. Whisper to you, reshape reality around you, from the unsettling silence of Eraserhead to the haunting madness of Inland Empire. These surreal horrors cling to your thoughts long after the screen fades. Stay with me. Let's explore the 10 films that feel like stepping into someone else's nightmare. And hey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps the darkness alive. 1. Eraserhead, 1977. A man trapped in a world that feels like a dream rotting from the inside. Where every shadow hides a shape you're not ready to face. But here's the real question. Are those shapes truly from his mind, or yours? Henry Spencer's world doesn't simply unravel, it breathes, trembles, and stares back at you. Imagine stepping into a night where the air feels too thick, where silence becomes a living thing crawling under your skin. That's the kind of nightmare Eraserhead pulls you into, one that doesn't jump at you, but slowly wraps itself around your spine. And as Henry wanders through deserted hallways, dim rooms, and unsettling whispers, you can almost feel your own reality bending with his. Have you ever had a dream so strange that you felt it watching you after you woke up? That's the energy this film brings, quiet, suffocating, and impossibly intimate. Henry's fear isn't loud, it's the kind that lingers. The kind you recognize from your own darkest moments. The world surrounding him feels industrial, decaying, almost as if it's half alive and half dead, refusing to choose a side. Every machine clanks like a heartbeat. Every corner hums with dread. And the baby, if we can still call it that, becomes the perfect symbol of fear you can't escape. Fear that you have to care for. Fear that cries. Fear that depends on you. Tell me, have you ever been haunted by a responsibility you never asked for? But here's what makes Eraserhead different from any other horror film on this list. It doesn't tell you what to feel. It lets you sit with your confusion, your discomfort, your curiosity. It lets your own mind fill in the blanks. David Lynch doesn't deliver explanations, he hands you questions. Heavy, unsettling questions about identity, guilt, desire, and the monstrous little corners we try to hide from ourselves. And while you're watching, you might start wondering, is this scene supposed to be frightening, or is it simply showing a truth I never wanted to face? The beauty of this nightmare isn't in its screams but in its stillness. In the way Henry's eyes seem to carry a weight you can't describe. In the way the world feels slightly wrong. Like a dream where the floor is just a little too soft. The faces just a little too still. And maybe that's why the film stays with you, because we all have dreams that feel like that. Don't we? Dreams that blur into waking life. Dreams we wish we could forget but never quite do. So I want to ask you, after watching Eraserhead, what disturbed you the most? Was it the imagery, the atmosphere, or something deeper? Something you recognized inside yourself? Let me know in the comments. This film isn't just meant to be watched, it's meant to be discussed, questioned, and experienced. 2. Possession, 1981. A woman's unraveling sanity spirals into something far darker than madness itself, pulling everyone around her into a nightmare that feels too raw, too human, and far too close. Tell me, have you ever watched someone fall apart so violently that it almost felt supernatural? There's something different about possession. Something that grabs you by the throat from the first moment and refuses to let go. Not because of monsters or ghosts, at least. Not the kind you expect, but because the horror comes from emotions we all know too well. Heartbreak, jealousy, obsession. The kind of pain that twists people into shapes even they can't recognize. As you follow Anna and Mark through their collapsing marriage, the film doesn't simply show you their suffering, it drags you into it. Room by room, scream by scream, and somewhere inside that chaos, something unexplainable begins to grow. Have you ever felt tension so heavy that you couldn't tell if it came from inside your chest or the world around you? That's what possession does. Berlin becomes a reflection of their emotional decay, cold, divided, crumbling from the inside out. Every argument feels like a storm breaking against the walls. Every silence feels like a trap waiting to spring. And then there's that infamous subway scene, a moment so raw, so unhinged, that even people who've never seen the movie still talk about it. When Anna's body contorts in impossible ways. When she screams as if something is tearing its way out of her soul. You don't just watch it. You feel it. And that's when the story begins to twist into something else entirely. Something more grotesque, more surreal, more terrifyingly intimate. The creature, if we can call it that, becomes the physical echo of everything Anna is hiding. Everything she cannot say. A manifestation of desire, guilt, trauma, and rebellion. It's disgusting, mesmerizing, and oddly tragic all at once. Did you interpret the creature as a symbol? Or did you see it as something real within the film's world? I'd love to hear what you think. Because every viewer walks away with a different answer. But the real horror of possession isn't found in its gore or the supernatural. It's in the emotional violence, the psychological cracks, the way love mutates into something sharp enough to cut. It forces you to confront the darkest version of relationships. The version where love and hate blur into one. And maybe that's why this film lingers so long, because deep down, we're all afraid of losing control. We're all afraid of becoming unrecognizable to ourselves. So tell me, after watching Possession, what moment hit you the hardest? Was it Anna's breakdown, Mark's descent, or the revelation twisting beneath it all? Drop your thoughts below. This is one nightmare that deserves a real conversation. 3. Begotten, 1989. A world is born from agony, death, and strange rebirth, an entire nightmare unfolding in raw, grainy silence. But before you look away, ask yourself, how much horror can you take when there are no words to guide you? No music to warn you, and nowhere to hide? There's a certain kind of fear that doesn't scream, doesn't chase, doesn't jump from the shadows. Instead, it crawls under your skin, quietly, patiently. Begotten is exactly that kind of horror. From the first distorted frames, you feel as if you've stumbled onto a forbidden ritual, something ancient. Something you were never meant to witness. The desaturated black and white imagery claws at your senses, almost suffocating, as if the film itself wants to erase all comfort and leave you stranded in a world without mercy. Have you ever watched something that made you uncomfortable simply because you couldn't explain it? That's where the true terror of Begotten begins. The characters don't speak, they don't plead, they simply act, slow, deliberate, unsettling motions that feel ritualistic, almost mythic, and as you watch the Mother Earth emerge from the remains of a dying god, a strange thought creeps in. Are these beings monsters, or reflections of us stripped of everything human? What makes this film so unnerving is the sense of witnessing creation not as a miracle, but as a violent transaction. The landscapes feel barren and cursed, the movements hypnotic yet disturbing. You start to wonder, is this a story of birth, or destruction, a beginning, or an ending? And more importantly, why does it feel like we're intruding on a secret the universe never intended to reveal? Begotten doesn't give you answers. It doesn't comfort you with explanations. Instead, it drags you into a symbolic nightmare where suffering becomes a language of its own. Every frame feels like a painting carved out of madness. Every scene feels like a memory from a dream you had as a child, one you tried to forget. But it always returned in the dark. And the silence, oh, the silence. It forces you to confront your own thoughts, your own interpretations. You're not just watching horror, you're participating in it. Have you ever had a dream so abstract, yet so terrifying, that you woke up questioning what your mind was trying to tell you? This film captures that feeling perfectly. By the time it ends, you might not fully understand what you've seen, but you will feel it, in a way that lingers long after. So I'm curious, what do you think Begotten represents? Is it creation, destruction, or something entirely different? Share your interpretation below. I promise, every viewer sees a different nightmare. 4. Tetsuo. The Iron Man, 1989. A man's body mutates into twisting metal and wires, plunging him into a chaotic nightmare where flesh and machinery violently merge. Can you imagine your own body turning against you like that? Some nightmares whisper, but Tetsuo doesn't whisper, it screams, claws, and drills its way straight into your mind. From the moment the transformation begins, you feel an uncomfortable pull, like the film is daring you to keep watching as the human body becomes something grotesque and mechanical. There's a strange rhythm to the chaos, A frantic heartbeat pounding beneath every screech of metal. And you have to admit, part of you is curious. Right? What would you do if your own body started changing into something unrecognizable? This film doesn't treat metal as just an object, it treats it like a living, hungry presence. You can almost feel the cold steel spreading through veins and bone, devouring identity. And the more the main character loses control, the more you start to wonder, is this transformation a curse, or a twisted evolution? Have you ever felt trapped in your own skin, like something inside you was pushing to break free? That feeling hangs over every moment here, turning body horror into something deeply personal. One of the wildest things about Tetsuo is how its chaos feels strangely hypnotic. The camera jerks and races. The editing slashes through scenes like razor blades. And the world around the characters vibrates with tension. Yet there's a strange beauty buried in the madness. It's like watching a nightmare set to a mechanical heartbeat. A dance of wires, flesh, and panic. And as everything spirals further out of control, the film challenges you. How much intensity can you handle before you have to look away? But beneath the violence and metal, there's an emotional layer many viewers miss. The transformation isn't random, it's fueled by fear, anger, and guilt. The machinery isn't just invading the body, it's invading the mind. It turns raw emotion into physical mutation, as if the character's internal turmoil is too powerful to stay hidden. Have you ever watched a horror scene and realized it was really about something deeper, something human, something familiar? By the end, when man and metal finally collide in full force, the question becomes harder to shake. Where does humanity end? And where does monstrosity begin? Maybe that's why this film lingers. It forces you to confront the idea that horror can come from within just as easily as from the outside. So tell me, did Tetsuo, the Iron Man, make you feel disturbed, fascinated, or maybe both at once? I'd love to hear your take, because everyone experiences this metallic nightmare differently. 5. The Reflecting Skin, 1990. A young boy in a sun-bleached countryside becomes convinced that a mysterious woman is a vampire, yet the real horrors come from the people he trusts most. Tell me, have you ever looked at something beautiful and felt, deep down, that something was terribly wrong? There's something haunting about the reflecting skin, but not in the usual sense. Its horror doesn't hide in shadows, it lurks in broad daylight. Wrapped in golden sunlight that feels too warm, too perfect, almost mocking. From the moment you enter this world, you sense a strange tension beneath the innocence. The fields stretch endlessly, the sky is impossibly blue, and the quiet town feels frozen in time, yet every frame whispers that something is rotting beneath the surface. Have you ever had that feeling? That uneasy instinct that beauty is only a mask? Through the eyes of young Seth, the world becomes a twisted fairy tale. His imagination takes the small tragedies of his life and turns them into monsters. And maybe that's why this story hits harder than you expect, because the true terror isn't supernatural at all, but the darkness that grows where love, grief, and loneliness get tangled up. When Seth becomes fixated on the widow next door, believing she drinks the life out of those around her, the line between childish fantasy and genuine threat blurs. Do you remember the first time you misunderstood something as a kid, and only years later realized the truth was far scarier? What makes this film even more disturbing is how adults in Seth's world fail him in ways both subtle and brutal. Every smile feels strained, every act of affection carries a hint of pain, and every secret seems heavier than the one before. His father collapses under guilt, his mother burns with silent rage, and his brother returns from war carrying shadows in his eyes. You can't help but wonder, is Seth truly surrounded by monsters? Or is he simply trying to make sense of a world that's too cruel for a child to understand? The sunlight becomes a cruel contrast to the emotional darkness. The landscapes are breathtaking, almost dreamlike, but the more beautiful the scenery, the more unsettling the story becomes. It's as if the film wants you to question whether beauty can be trusted at all. And maybe that's why this movie stays with people, because it forces you to confront the horrors hiding in ordinary places. Have you ever known a memory that looked beautiful on the outside but felt chilling underneath? As everything unravels, Seth's innocence is chipped away piece by piece, leaving behind a kind of pain that's hard to name. And by the end, The question that lingers is not whether the woman was a monster, but whether the adults around him ever gave him a chance to understand the world in a kinder way. So I want to ask you, who do you think is the true villain of The Reflecting Skin? The widow, the townspeople, or the harsh reality Seth was forced to face too soon? Share your thoughts. I'm curious how you interpret this haunting sunlit nightmare. 6. Santa Sangre, 1989. A boy trapped in a world of cults, trauma, and illusions spirals into a violent destiny he can't escape, but is any of it real? Or just the echo of a shattered mind? If you've ever wondered what it feels like to dream with your eyes wide open, the kind of dream where colors scream louder than words and every gesture feels like a prophecy, Santa Sangre is exactly that feverish descent. And here's a question for you. Have you ever watched a movie so bizarre, so emotionally twisted, that you weren't sure whether you should be scared or mesmerized? Because that's the exact sweet spot where Santa Sangre lives. The story follows Phoenix, a young boy raised inside a bizarre cult that worships a mutilated saint, and later finds himself overshadowed by the powerful, suffocating influence of his mother. But don't expect a clean division between reality and fantasy. The film dances between them like a hallucination. Scenes bleed into each other. Symbols whisper meaning and then disappear. Characters shift forms as if responding to some cosmic joke. And as Phoenix grows into adulthood, his attempts to break free become tangled with nightmares, memories, and a strange sense of loyalty that keeps pulling him back to the past. What makes this movie unforgettable is the way it blurs horror with heartbreak. One moment you're watching a surreal ritual soaked in bright red imagery, and the next you're pulled into the raw pain of a boy desperately trying to understand where love ends and control begins. Have you ever felt trapped by something from your past, a belief, a person, a memory, even when you knew it was hurting you? That's Phoenix's entire life, played out in a swirl of madness and spiritual obsession. And the visuals, my God. The visuals, the circus performers, the vivid costumes, the grotesque religious symbols, the strangely beautiful violence, it all feels like stepping into a dream you shouldn't be having. A dream that knows too much about you. The movie keeps asking, what is controlling you? And the more you watch, the harder it becomes to shake that question away. But maybe the most haunting part is this: you'll start doubting your own perspective. The film constantly challenges your sense of truth. Who is real? What is imagined? Which parts reflect mental trauma? And which are supernatural? By the time the final revelations come, you may realize you've been just as lost inside the labyrinth as Phoenix himself. So let me ask you, do you enjoy horror movies that feel like emotional puzzles? The kind where you're not just scared by what you see, but by what you feel creeping under your skin? If yes, Santa Sangre might end up being one of the most unforgettable experiences you've ever had. And if you've already seen it, I'd love to know. Which scene stayed with you the longest, and why? 7. Errementari. The Blacksmith and the Devil, 2017. A reclusive blacksmith hiding a demonic secret soon finds his world shattered when a curious orphan girl uncovers the terrifying truth. But is the real danger the devil, or the humans who come knocking? There's something enchanting about the kind of horror that feels like a dark fairy tale whispered beside a dying fire. And Errementari carries that exact energy, the sense that you're stepping into a forbidden story passed down for generations. One you know you shouldn't believe, yet it feels a little too real to ignore. So let me ask you right away, do you enjoy horror that mixes folklore with moral dilemmas, where even the monsters might not be what they seem? The film follows Pachi, a blacksmith feared by everyone in the village. Rumors swirl around him like smoke, that he's violent, cruel, cursed. But behind the locked doors of his grim workshop lies something far worse than anyone imagines. A demon trapped in a cage, screaming threats and bargains in the darkness. And honestly, wouldn't that alone make you want to watch? A man and a demon locked in an eternal standoff, each trying to outsmart the other. It's the kind of setup that practically begs you to lean in closer. But the story becomes truly compelling when Usue, a lonely, misunderstood girl, wanders into this twisted place. Her innocence cuts through the gloom like a flicker of light. And suddenly the tale shifts. What happens when a child sees more humanity in a demon than in the villagers who claim to be righteous? What does that say about good and evil, Or the masks we all wear? This movie doesn't spoon-feed answers. Instead, it lets you sit with the ambiguity, nudging you to question your instincts. And seriously, while watching, did you ever find yourself sympathizing with the demon? Don't worry, that's part of the spell. As the story unfolds, tensions rise between folklore, faith, revenge, and redemption. The blacksmith's past is revealed piece by painful piece, and every revelation makes you rethink the man you thought you understood. The visuals add even more depth: eerie forests, flickering torches, the metallic clang of Pachi's hammer echoing like a heartbeat, and the unsettling glow coming from the demon's cage. It all builds a world that feels both ancient and claustrophobic, like stepping into a nightmare carved from Basque mythology. But here's where the film really hooks you. The line between villain and victim starts to blur. The villagers, supposedly righteous, become increasingly cruel and hypocritical, while the demon, oddly enough, becomes a figure of sympathy wrapped in mischief and regret. Isn't it fascinating when a horror film pushes you to root for the unexpected side? By the time the movie reaches its fiery climax, you might find yourself wondering what you would have done in Pachi's place. Do we ever escape the consequences of our choices? Or do we simply learn to live with the monsters we've made, human or otherwise? Tell me, after hearing this, do you think the blacksmith was right in how he dealt with the demon? Or would you have chosen differently? 8. The House, 2022. A stop-motion nightmare where 3 unsettling stories unfold inside the same house, each revealing that sometimes the walls around us twist in more terrifying ways than anything outside. And trust me, once you step inside this place, you won't leave without questioning something about yourself. There's a strange charm to the house, the kind that sneaks up quietly before planting its claws deep under your skin. You think you're about to watch a whimsical stop-motion tale, and then it blindsides you with dread wrapped in delicate craftsmanship. Let me ask you right from the start, have you ever felt like a place was watching you, judging you, or shaping your life in ways you didn't fully understand? Because this film takes that feeling and turns it into a living, breathing creature. The first story drags you into a world where a poor family is gifted a luxurious house they didn't ask for, a house that keeps shifting, swallowing control room by room. Walls stretch, doors appear, and comfort curdles into captivity. It's the kind of horror that whispers, "Are you sure you're safe in your own home?" And honestly, who hasn't felt like their environment sometimes takes over their life? Then the second tale switches the tone but not the unease. A desperate real estate developer, a literal rat, in the most charmingly grotesque way, struggles to sell the same cursed house. Every time he thinks he's close to success, his world collapses a little more. The guests who invade his space behave like parasites, clinging to his sanity until it frays. Have you ever had people in your life who entered politely, then never seemed to leave? This segment hits that nerve with a grin. And finally, the third story wraps everything in a foggy, drowned world where the house stands as one of the last dry refuges. A landlady fights to keep control as her tenants drift into their own spiritual escapism. Water leaks, foundations shift, and reality melts into something dreamlike and bittersweet. By then, the house stops being a structure and becomes a metaphor for attachment, fear, and the struggle to let go. It makes you ask, are you holding on to something that's already sinking? What makes the house so gripping is the way each segment mirrors a different kind of nightmare: loss of control, invasive chaos, and the weight of refusing change. And the stop-motion animation doesn't soften the blow, it sharpens it. Every uncanny movement, every flicker of expression, every creak of the wooden floors makes the world feel alive in a way that's both beautiful and deeply wrong. So here's a question for you. Which kind of horror gets under your skin more, the fear of losing control, the fear of losing peace, or the fear of losing the future? This movie touches all three, and I'm curious which one hit you the hardest. 9. The Killing of a Sacred Deer, 2017. A surgeon's carefully controlled life unravels when a mysterious boy enters his world, and the price demanded for past sins becomes more terrifying than any ghost or monster. If you've ever felt like fate was quietly tightening a noose around your choices, this story will hit you like a punch to the chest. There's something strangely cold yet hypnotic about this film. Like walking into a hospital room at night and feeling the fluorescent lights staring back at you. At first, everything seems normal, almost too normal. Stephen, a respected surgeon, lives in a clean, polished world where everything is measured, predictable, and tightly sealed. But you know that feeling when a single small crack appears, and suddenly you can't stop noticing it? That's exactly what happens the moment Martin, a teenage boy with unsettling sincerity, steps into his life. Martin isn't threatening in the usual horror movie way. He doesn't shout, doesn't chase, doesn't even raise a hand. Instead, he becomes a quiet force that pulls the entire family into a slow, suffocating nightmare. The dread grows like invisible smoke. You don't see it right away, but you feel it filling every corner. Have you ever met someone who seemed harmless at first but carried an aura that made you uneasy without knowing why? As Martin's influence spreads, the family begins suffering inexplicable symptoms. Their bodies refuse to obey them. Their willpower collapses. Their sanity cracks. And what's chilling isn't just the physical horror, it's the emotional unraveling. Each family member desperately clings to their own version of reality, bargaining, denying, or pleading, as if trying to outrun a storm they can't see but can definitely feel. What makes this story stick to your spine is how natural everything feels. The characters speak with unsettling calmness, as if emotion itself has been wrung out of the world. Rooms feel too bright, too clean, too quiet. You start questioning what's real and what's metaphorical. Is this supernatural punishment or psychological collapse? Is Martin a person, an omen, or something the family created out of guilt? And more importantly, does it even matter? The moral dilemma at the heart of the film is agonizing. Someone must pay the price. But who decides? And what does justice even look like when the universe itself seems to be judging you? It's the kind of story that forces you to imagine yourself in the worst possible position, and wonder what choice you'd make when all the right answers disappear. So tell me, do you think the film is truly supernatural? Or is it a brutal metaphor for guilt, responsibility, and the consequences we pretend not to see? And if you were in Stephen's place, would you have chosen differently? 10. Inland Empire, 2006. An actress loses her grasp on reality when her new role begins bleeding into her real life, and the deeper she falls, the harder it becomes to tell whose story she's actually living. If you've ever felt your mind slip for just a moment, you'll understand exactly how this film grabs you and refuses to let go. There's a certain kind of fear that doesn't shout, it whispers. It creeps in slowly, curling around your thoughts until you're not sure which of them belong to you. Inland Empire is built entirely from that whisper, that uneasy feeling that your world might be shifting in ways you can't see. And as you follow Nikki, played with haunting fragility by Laura Dern, you start to wonder, how much of your identity is truly yours, and how easily could it be rewritten? The story begins innocently enough. An actress lands a dream role. But the production carries a curse, or a rumor of one. And you know how rumors work. They plant themselves in the back of your mind. Waiting, Nikki's world starts bending at the edges. Scenes blend together, time fractures, moments repeat or dissolve, and suddenly the role she's playing feels less like acting and more like a trap she's been gently pushed into. Have you ever had a dream where you're running through doors, only to find each one opens into another version of the same place? What's unsettling is how alive the film feels. Like it's breathing with her. Rooms stretch into labyrinths. Faces warp into unfamiliar versions of themselves. Even her own voice feels like it might belong to someone else. And in those moments, you might find yourself leaning in, trying to pick out the logic beneath the chaos, only to realize that the chaos itself is the logic. It's a puzzle that doesn't want solving, it wants experiencing. As Nikki spirals deeper, the movie becomes a mirror held up to fear itself, not the fear of monsters or shadows, but the fear of losing your grip on who you are, the fear of stepping into a role that consumes you, the fear of realizing that maybe you've already crossed a line you can't uncross. And honestly, have you ever had a moment where you questioned your own memory? Even for a second? That tiny panic is exactly the emotion this film magnifies. What I love most is how personal this experience becomes. Everyone interprets it differently. Some see it as a descent into madness. Others as a nightmare stitched from trauma, fame, and fractured identity. So I'm curious, when you watch Inland Empire, do you think Nikki is trapped by a curse? By her own mind? Or by the world around her? And which moment hit you the hardest, the surreal, the emotional, or the completely unexplainable? And just like that, as Inland Empire drifts back into the shadows, we circle out of this labyrinth of surreal nightmares, each film twisting reality in its own unforgettable way. Maybe one of them stirred a memory, or made you question what's real for just a second. Tell me, which of these 10 disturbed you the most, and why? I'd love to hear your take. If this journey pulled you in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got many more dark corners left to explore together.